Hello friends, my name is James. And this is my 1965 Alberg 30 sloop Tritea. We are on a mission to sail around the world and see as much of this beautiful planet as possible. We're currently working our way through the South Pacific. I can't wait to show you everything we see. Hello friends, I'm getting ready to depart for American Samoa. I want to give you guys a little walkthrough tour of what Tritea looks like when she's in passage making mode. And then we'll look down below first, and then we'll go up on deck and have a peek. And it's a beautiful day here in Bora, and I'll be departing in a few hours. So let's look at how I set Tritea up for these longer passages. The first significant thing that I do is I make my pilot berth. So I turn the cabin into sleeping quarters, and these are lee cloths that you can untie and you can stow them under the bunk or under the cushion when you're not at sea, so they're not in the way. But when we're underway and the boat's rocking and rolling or we're heeled over, then this keeps me from getting thrown out onto the floor. I have them on the other side too, but the other side bunk is very short. Even I'm very short, but it's even shorter. So this is where I always sleep. And then this is like my lazy boy recliner where I always sit and do all my business right by the chart table. I have my books all here. I keep power bars right next to Quick Grab. I have Dramamine in case I'm feeling crappy. I can go ahead and not have to dig around looking for a pill if I'm feeling like crap. Got my logbook here, getting ready to take down our daily noon positions. And that's the jam for the sleeping arrangement for the passages. So one other nice thing about this berth is that I can lay here and see the iPad that's in the over the chart table. So I can see our course and when the actual wind meter up top is working, which it's not working at the moment. When it's working, I can see the wind speed and all that stuff. But none of that really matters. You don't really need to know wind speed. And the more you sail, the more you know what the wind is just from the sound and from feeling it. But that's a nice thing that I can kind of see what's happening from this. And then I can easily, quickly get out into the cockpit and handle the business of shortening sail if needed. Got our galley, which you guys most of you have seen underway, which gets bonkers. So that's all ready to go. This is the other berth. This is my life raft, which I hope to never have to use. Got my lee cloth up, and here's my spinnaker. So it's easy grab access. I got dry clothes in a dry bag, like clean and dry underwear and shirts and stuff like that. It's like Tritea doesn't have a ton of leaks, but it seems like no matter what, things get wet inside a boat when you're underway. So moving forward, the V-berth, it turns into a stowage area. I put down a tarp over the mattress because these old bronze hatches tend to leak. So those guys, you know, it's gonna protect the mattress. It'll just accumulate on this tarp. And then I have a bunch of stuff just stowed forward. I push it that way so that if these hatches leak, then it's not gonna get everything sopping wet. And normally I put the outboard engine right here and the dinghy. But on this trip, we're gonna do something different, and we'll talk about that when we get outside. All right, let's head out on deck and have a look at that. Here we are. So normally I put the outboard forward, but this trip I'm gonna start out keeping it on the stern rail and see how she does. If it feels like it's no good, then I'll put her forward. The only reason it wouldn't be good is because there's adding more weight to the stern, and I have very low freeboard anyway. So I think it's gonna be okay. If it's not, I can easily take that off and get it forward. It's not a problem. There's that. Let's go forward. There's the dinghy. That's another thing. This is the first time I've ever gonna be doing a longer passage with the dinghy on the foredeck. Normally I deflate it, roll it up, put it in a bag down below. But since this is only like a 9-day passage, and it's following seas. If we were beating into waves, there's no way I would leave it on the foredeck, because it's like, that's a lot for the waves to hit and it could damage the dinghy or the boat. So, but since we're gonna be running with the seas kind of from now on until we sail from Fiji to New Zealand, I think it's gonna be okay. And again, it's something that if it seems not chill, I can easily like drop sail. It would be annoying, but I could drop sail, roll up the dinghy on the foredeck and put it down below, but I don't think it's gonna be a problem. Normally I like to keep the decks really clear of anything, even fuel cans and stuff. I find ways to stow them in the cockpit lockers so that there's not as much for waves to hit when we're in rough seas. But again, this passage is, we're running with everything, so I think it's gonna be great. I have it elevated still because I have to unhook the mooring lines, and then I'll motor out and get it secured before we leave the lagoon here at Bora Bora. And yeah, everything's ready to go. Here's a beautiful mountain, the lagoon, and I am excited and ready for this passage. So on my regular morning deck check, where I'll go out, check the rigging, all the connections, you know, just kind of get a look at everything, look up top, see how the mast looks, check the sails, check the lines for chafing. I discovered that one of the webbings for the slides that hold the mainsail to the slide that goes up the mast has chafed through at the second batten car. So we need to lower the mast to that car. Lower the mast. We need to lower the sail to that car, and I need to lash it with Dyneema lash, and then we can go ahead and re-raise the mainsail. It's between the second and third reef points. If it was below the second reef point, I may have reefed it down and fixed it in American Samoa, because the motion is so kind of silly. But the winds aren't as bad right now as they're supposed to get this afternoon, so I'd rather try to fix it now. I don't want to lose speed. I don't want to have the main reef down to the third reef. That's absurd. We'd lose so much speed and it's unnecessary. So it's going to be a little bit of a circus stunt to get this thing lashed, but it'll be okay. I'll just go forward, tie myself to the mast, and get it knocked out. So let's get that project started. So slight change of plans as far as how we're going to approach this. I realized I'm just going to try to zip tie that slide onto the mainsail. We only need it to last for like 4 days, so I'm going to do 3 zip ties, heavy zip ties, and we'll see if that works. That would be a nice quick solution with this sort of motion. And if not, then later on, you know, I might regret it, but then we can always lash it with Dyneema. But let's go ahead and, yeah, let's just zip tie this thing on and see if that works. made quick work of that considering the sea state. Got a loose lashing of Dyneema cord on to get that slide taken care of. I put zip ties on it that a few days ago that had chafed through last night, so I went ahead and got that dealt with. And seems like everything, this is Friday, seems like everything's kind of coming down finally as it was forecasted to. The winds are kind of up and down, but they're coming down. The sea state, while big, it doesn't feel like it's charging as hard as it was yesterday or last night. So that's great. And then it's supposed to come down to like 18 knots tomorrow, and then 14 knots on Sunday. And then we should be getting in Monday. It's looking like it. We're doing really good runs. Yesterday's noon to noon was 129 miles. So we're doing good. And all is well. Okay, so I want to show you guys what I do on passage every day at noon. I log our noon position and take it down in the logbook, put it on the chart plotter, which I use Navionics for my navigation software for passage making. So any minute now, the alarm's going to go off on my iPhone and we'll start the process. I've sailed with a captain in the past who took down his position every 6 hours and wrote it in the logbook, which is really good practice. I used to do it at noon and midnight when I first started doing passage making, and now I've gotten to where I just do it at noon. It would probably be better for me to do it both noon and midnight, just because then if you lose all GPS and everything, you know within 12 hours of where your last position was. It's a little harder to kind of lose everything nowadays like that, you know, because we have a GPS signal here, we have a GPS signal in the VHF, we have a kind of spotty GPS signal in the iPhone. I also have a puck that I can plug into my laptop that gives me a GPS location. So we have a lot of different options for gaining that. And even if we lost all electricity to the boat, the iPad and my Garmin puck, which I use, this is the GPS puck I use, they both have batteries. So even if the batteries died for the boat, initially we would be able to get it from there. Same thing with the iPhone. But it's good to note that the GPS in an iPhone is very spotty at sea. So I haven't really been able to get a solid fix for like 3 days on my iPhone. I like to do it, log my position on my phone and my iPad, so I have a redundancy there as well as a logbook. Also, if I'm just laying in the berth, I can kind of check where we were, what distance we've covered, yada yada. But same things happened on, so there's our alarm. So stop that, and what we do is go into here, and there's our, I'm not sure how well you can see this, but it's Navionics. You can see our position. I hit the little pin, and it gives us a pin to mark our position. I go in, and I name it. Crashed. Of course, when I'm filming, it crashes. It doesn't crash too often, but that's the problem with iPad, right? And not a built-in chart plotter. So I've got our pin here that we just made, and we'll go ahead and name it. Noon, day, this is the start of day 8 for me, the 8th day at sea. So I put noon, day 8, and then I put AS for American Samoa, because I have so many other passages that it would be named the same if I just did it noon, day 8. So there's that, we got that named, and then we'll go ahead and take down our position. I got my logbook with all my positions. So today is the 24th of September. It's 14 degrees, 55 minutes, 0.979 seconds south by 166 degrees, 39 minutes, 013 seconds west. And then once we've got that logged down, we can go back, we can zoom out to our previous day's pin, which is over here. I touch that and it tells me in Navionics that we've done 121. We are currently 121 nautical miles from that pin. So that's what I log as my distance traveled for the day. 121. And then I'll go back in and add up, like I keep my totals on the same below, on the same line, so that I can know the total distances of the passage so far. So that's all done. And then we go back, and now what I'll do is I'll open my computer and I'll go into the tracker blog and I'll put in the noon position, our day's run, and then that gives us another point showing not just us on the boat, but the rest of the world, shore team, my loved ones. At noon today, that's exactly where I was. So if I just go radio silence, they know where to look. So that's how you go about that. And I don't know if you can see it, but we are, this pink line, if you can see it, this pink line is our intended run line to American Samoa. Now, the winds have backed, which means that they are changing direction in a counterclockwise manner. And we're going to have to go up and change our sail configuration. Right now we're running wing and wing, but the winds are backed and they're going to continue to back. They're backing from easterlies, which means they're coming from the east, to northeasterlies. And our current sail configuration, it's not possible to sail wing and wing with the way that the winds are going to keep backing until by 3 p.m. they're going to be kind of where they're going to be for the next 3 days. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up all this, and then me and you guys go on deck and we'll talk about what the sail configuration is currently, and then what we're going to do to try to get on our run line and get sailing the correct course. So the seas are still kind of silly at the moment. I've turned off the auto leveling function on the camera so that it's not quite as seasicky while I show you guys what I'm about to do. We'll go ahead and talk through the parts of wing and wing. Now, for any seasoned sailors, you guys already know this. This little part of the video is for people who either just got into sailing or they don't know anything about sailing. Just to explain what wing and wing sailing is. It's a really fun thing to do, and the only way that you can sail when the wind is directly behind you. So let's look at that setup real quick. Okay, the first thing I want to point out is we have the boom paid very far out. We have it paid out to starboard, and when you have the boom paid this far out, you must have what's called a preventer line on, which is a line that secures the boom leading forward so that when the wind gets on the wrong side of the sail, it doesn't send the boom flying around dangerously. That's called a crash jibe. And it can knock someone out, knock someone overboard, or even kill them if it hits them in the head hard enough. Or it can come around and take out your rigging on the opposite side and bring your mast down potentially. So you always want to have a preventer out when you're sailing with your boom swung out to the extreme like this. Another thing to know about preventers is that you always want your preventer at the boom's end. A lot of contemporary sailboats have their main sheet in the middle of the boom, and if you clip it there and you send it forward and you tighten that thing down, when your boat rolls in the water, if it hits the wave hard enough, it can snap your boom right at that point. So like, imagine you got all this tension right in the middle, and that's a break point, right? Because there's a hole there for your main sheet. When that boom goes in the water, you know, a big wave, which it always does, I see it do it 5 times a day. When it hits, there's nothing to support that boom's end, and it'll just snap. Very common. So even if your main sheet and everything is in the middle of your boom, you want to make sure that your preventer is on the boom's end, leading as far forward as possible. Now on Traitea, I have a line on either side already set up, and I have permanent blocks installed at the bow. So my preventer goes all the way to the bow and then all the way back to the cockpit. And you'll see as we start bringing it in, you just pay out a little bit on the preventer, and then you bring in your main sheet so you can safely get that boom in. And that way nothing gets damaged and no one gets hurt. Now on the headsail, we have a whisker pole. And that's a little bitty pole. It's much smaller than a spinnaker pole, which is used for the spinnaker sail that's very large. The whisker pole is usually telescopic. You can make it go different distances. It's really lightweight. It clips on one side to the mast, and on the other end it just kind of hooks onto the line of your headsail. And that allows you to keep your sail out, and when you're sailing with the big seas, your boat tends to swerve back and forth, and what happens is when it swerves too far one way or the other, then the wind gets behind the sail and it collapses, loses power, it flogs, does all kinds of silly stuff. So much like the preventer is keeping our boom out for wing and wing, our whisker pole is keeping our headsail out so that it can quickly refill with wind when it gets back on course and be as efficient as possible in pulling the boat through the water. Now, this is the only way to sail a boat dead downwind that is a sloop or a ketch or anything like that. So in the age of sail, you saw the big square rigger boats. A lot of people associate like pirate ships and, you know, ships of the line. So they had big square sails, and they, you know, that's why they sailed primarily in the trade winds, because the wind's from behind. Which meant they couldn't sail upwind very well. Well, contemporary boats, you can sail almost in any wind direction except dead into the wind. So to sail dead downwind, you either run a spinnaker if it's really light wind, or you sail wing and wing and get the most out of what you got. Okay, it's time to bring in this sail configuration, and then we'll see what kind of setup we're gonna do with the direction the wind is going right now and what our course line is to be. This is the end of my preventer right here, and I'm just going to pay it out a little bit. Not much, because the sea's still doing its business while you're trying to get this thing worked out safely. I'll bring in this a little bit, and in a minute it's going to find its way and come straight midships. But so now that's tight. I lock that down, the main sheet down. I pay it a little bit more. See, now I'll go ahead and see how slack it is. Just do it real slow so it doesn't get away from you. Wait until he moves. Pay it out a little bit. Okay, there we go. Now she's safely amidships. Now, I want to go, the winds have gotten so light, I'm going to go ahead and shake out my second reef now. And then we'll see what kind of sail configuration we need to be set up on to keep sailing. All right, I got the reef, the second reef shaken out of the mainsail. Now I'm going to alter our course and see what we need to do elsewise. Now alter the course on the wind vane. There's just this little control line here, and you just turn it, and it turns the top unit there. See where that gets us. I think that's a little bit much. And our headsail is staying full, so I think we can lose the whisker pole and just get to sailing regular. I'm going to leave the whisker pole for now on that headsail because I feel like at the angle the wind is, it's going to collapse a lot. But I don't think that the wind is behind us enough to go wing and wing on the opposite side. So we're going to leave this set up for now, sail for about an hour, and see if we want to change it. It'd be better if we could get rid of the pole and pay out more headsail, but I think the mainsail is gonna be wind shadowing that headsail, so I think this is our best configuration at the moment. We are about 14 miles from Manua Islands, and I want to try to show you guys something about like the way the ancient Polynesian wayfinders would read the waves and the currents and stuff. I'm not sure how well it'll translate on camera, but I wanted to talk to you guys about what I'm seeing. I believe there's a north running current. Right now there's about 9 knots of wind. And that's apparent to me by the fact that just how it feels, first of all, and secondly, there's just like a hint of whitecaps on the little wavelets. The sea's very calm right now, but the whitecaps really start around 10 knots to be kind of like, you know, obvious, but there's just kind of a hint of these little whitecaps. So I'm guessing around 9 knots. And currently the winds are coming kind of almost out of the north. Yeah, they're coming straight out of the north at the moment. And you can see in the little wavelets, with this little bit of wind, the little wavelets are very steep, which tells me that the current is running to the north, so coming out of the south. And that's one of the things that the Polynesian wayfinders talked about. That's how one of the ways they could read current, other than taking, especially when you're offshore and you couldn't see land or anything in there in their outrigger canoes, is they would look at how steep the wavelets are and the texture. They would describe the texture of the sea as being very tight. And so you can see the texture on the surface. With as little wind as there is, there's a lot of texture, which tells me that it's wind against current. So that's pretty amazing. You know, it takes a lifetime of those cats being taught that by masters, and about being in the sea, especially reading the stars and all that stuff. For me, I'm just like someone that's interested in the process. I don't believe I'll ever be able to really use those as navigation, but it's fun to notice them and to think about how they populated the entire Pacific, Southern Pacific, and, you know, Micronesian stuff with no metal, no compasses, just by reading the elements. That is beyond fascinating to me. So I just wanted to share that with you guys. Pretty neat. There's so many lessons to be learned from the Polynesian wayfinders. So people are always asking me on these passage videos if I'm fishing all the time or why am I not fishing. And if you saw my first long passage video from Los Angeles to Hawaii, you saw how I did try to catch a tuna when I was swarmed by tuna and my line snapped or my knot failed, I'm not sure which. I'm new to fishing, so it was likely like my fault that did not work out. But there's a few reasons. There are several reasons I'm not fishing constantly. One is I don't like to take anything I don't need, and I'm generally always very well stocked with food. It's no secret that our seas are heavily overfished by factory fishing. And if I have food, then, you know, I don't see a need to pull something from the sea just for fun. And there's nothing, you know, being well stocked with food, I just don't see a reason for me to be fishing while on passage. Which leads us to the other reason, is that whatever I'm going to catch is likely going to be pretty big because of where I'm fishing and because of the gear I'm using. And since I'm a solo sailor, it would be kind of a bummer. I don't have much of a freezer. It's a very small freezer. It doesn't really freeze anything. So much of the fish would go to waste, or go to waste by human consumption. Throwing anything overboard, it gets consumed by something on some level in the sea, right? But I would hate to, you know, pull something out of the sort of like reproductive system of the sea. I would hate to pull something out of the sea and then only be able to eat a small amount of it. I'd rather that thing just keep living and keep reproducing more fishes. So if there were two of us on board, if, you know, there was somebody else on board, I would be fishing constantly, because it'd be a lot easier for me to justify twice the demand of food, and also, you know, twice that wouldn't be wasted through human consumption, and twice that wouldn't be wasted in regards to like humans consuming it. So those are the sort of main reasons. Another reason is like the sea state. Like for this entire passage, other than today, it was either pretty extremely rolly or high winds or big seas. And the idea of like, if I caught a fish, then I would have to be out here filleting it, and those kind of conditions did not appeal to me. So, and like I said, I'm new to fishing. And if you saw the passage video, if you saw the Hawaii passage video, you saw that I was using a Cuban yo-yo, which is what I'll be using again today. I have a really nice pin rod and a pin squall 2 reel. So I've got a full setup. And I have lures and all kinds of stuff. If I ever needed to fish seriously for food, I'm well stocked. But Cuban yo-yos are very common on sailboats, and or hand reels, whatever they call them. So they're easy, they're simple, and that's what we're going to be using today. And I put on a cedar plug. And luckily it's got a nice long leader, and luckily it has its own crimped leader that I had nothing to do with the fabrication of. So, because I think that's what happened on my last time I was trying to fish, is like, I think my knot failed. So, we're going to go ahead and get this in the water. So we're going to go ahead and get this in the water. We are right alongside, we're like, I don't know, 10 miles off of Manua Islands, so this is a good spot, I think, to be fishing. And then we'll just kind of run this until sunset and see if we get any bites. I got my gaff hook ready, I got my net ready, knives and all that stuff, so we'll see if we can catch ourselves some dinner and go from there. All right, there we go. Got it all set up. We'll see if we catch some dinner. It's like 5:30 in the afternoon. Just brought in my fishing line. We did not catch anything, so I'll be making food tonight. I hope you've enjoyed this special episode. I wanted to put this together to show you kind of a closer look at some of the finite details of passage making, a lot of which will end up on the cutting room floor when trying to make a film that is more entertaining and less technical. If you enjoy the content on this channel and would like to contribute, you can consider joining the Patreon crew. Thanks for watching. Fair winds until next time.